Have you ever heard of a job called Last Contact? I didn't think so, but without Last Contact, society would collapse within a week. I learned about it after high school while looking through classified job listings. Most were normal: warehouse work, landscaping, retail. Then I found one that read, Last Contact Trainee, no experience required. Must be willing to work with the recently deceased. $2,000 sign-on bonus. $45 hourly wage. That caught my attention. I figured it was some position at a funeral home or the morgue. That was fine by me, so I called the number. A dull voice answered by the third ring. They took my name and said they'd call back in a few days. I rolled my eyes and went about my day, thinking I'd fallen for some prank. The pay was way too good to be true. 3 days later, I was shocked to receive a call from that number. Hello, Will. Congratulations on becoming the newest member of the Last Contact family. I was dumbfounded. Thanks. If it's convenient, we'd like you to start this coming Monday. Night shift. Be at our call center by 9 p.m. After the voice gave me the address, they hung up. If I had known what Last Contact was at that time, I probably never would have shown up. Monday came quick. I packed a bag of snacks, hopped into my crummy car, and crossed town to the call center. It was a run-down industrial building next to the train tracks, a tiny parking lot lit by a lone streetlight. I stepped out and tried the handle. Locked. A voice in my head told me to turn back, but instead I knocked. After a short pause, the door swung open. The man who opened it was short and a little pudgy. He had thinning dark brown hair, long sideburns, and thin glasses that sat low on his nose. "Are you Will?" he asked. "Yeah, that's me." He stretched out his hand. "I'm Nate. I'll be your trainer for the next few weeks." He ushered me inside. The interior wasn't much nicer than the outside. The entryway opened into a long hallway, which Nate led me down. We passed several doors before Nate opened one. "This will be your workspace." It was a room, small as heck. It was illuminated with a greenish-yellow fluorescent light. A long desk rested against the back wall, which was also home to the only window in the room. On the desk sat an ancient-looking telephone. Nate looked at me. "How much did they tell you?" "Not a thing." He sighed. "That figures. Let's go to the break room and talk through it." I followed him. The break room had flickering lights, a handful of tables and chairs. The back wall had large windows that looked out towards the train tracks and the darkness beyond. We sat down. Nate slid a paper towards me. "Before we get going, they want you to sign the contract." "Contract?" "Yeah, you're required to work here for a minimum of 5 years. After that, if you continue, you get a $9 raise, but you have to sign on for another 5. I stared at the sheet. "Do I have a choice?" He smirked and shook his head. "Not really." I swallowed and signed my name. As I did, Nate began explaining, when people die unexpectedly, they get one final phone call. One last contact with the world of the living. I'm sure my face demonstrated my disbelief. I know, sounds silly. But the reality is that those who are killed or died unexpectedly are given the opportunity for a last call before their soul passes on. It's our job to answer those calls. This job is important for 3 reasons. First, we provide comfort. Second, we gather important information the dead hold: passwords, locations, military codes. And thirdly, spirits who call and no one picks up tend to become violent and dangerous. I didn't know what to say. "Let's see if some calls help give answers," he said, patting me on the back and heading out. We returned to my room. Nate sat in the chair. "I'll take the calls tonight. I'll put them on speaker so you can listen in." It was near midnight when the phone rang. Nate picked up. "Hello, my name is Chris. What's yours?" I was surprised he didn't use his real name. The room crackled with static, but a monotone voice spoke. "I'm Mike." "Hello, Mike. This is your last contact. I'm sorry to have to tell you, but you have died." The phone went silent. Then, a sad, confused voice finally replied. "What? How? No, that's not possible." "I'm sorry, Mike. We don't have much time. Do you have any passwords or information your loved ones will need?" Sobbing could be heard through the phone. Nate sighed. "Mike, please, your family will appreciate it." The voice managed to squeak out his banking information and the combination to a safe. He begged Nate to tell his family that he loved them. But Nate only took down the passwords. The call had only been going on for about a minute when the line went dead. Nate put the phone back in its place and sighed heavily. They only get 60 seconds. Get as much information as you can. No personal messages make it to the families, so don't bother. Why did you say your name was Chris? Oh, I don't use my real name after the incident last year. I stared at him, hoping he'd elaborate. He didn't. Instead, he showed me how to create a file for the caller. They're not all that easy. The next call didn't come for hours. I could feel myself nodding off as the phone rang. Hello, my name is Steve. What's yours? Said Nate. Immediately, a haunting voice responded. Am I dead? Yes, I'm sorry to say you are. What's your name? Instead of answering, the voice laughed and said, I found the door. In an instant, Nate hung up and swore under his breath. He reached under the desk and pulled out another phone, dialing a number taped to the side. What's going on? I cried. You'll find out soon enough, was the only answer he gave before lifting the second phone to his ear. Yeah, it's Nate. We got another one talking about the door. The voice on the other end said something I couldn't make out. He hung up and turned to me with a fake smile. How about some coffee? I followed him to the break room. He made small talk as he poured old coffee for us. As he did, I stared out the window and noticed a dark figure standing past the train tracks. A chill went up my spine. Hey Nate, someone is standing. He cut me off, quickly whispering, Don't look at it. It always shows up after a call like that. What do you mean? Look away, he hissed, grabbing my shoulder and spinning me around. We stared at the dirt wall. Nate was holding his breath. After a few minutes, I heard a gentle tapping on the window. It continued for minutes before it stopped. We can turn around now. It leaves after the tapping. As we turned, I could see that the entire window was iced over. What is going on? He shrugged. In the future, the faster you look away, the better. He walked out into the hallway. When we got back to the workspace, he turned and looked me in the eyes. Look, Will, this isn't your standard job. I'm sure you've realized that already, but it's important and it pays well. My advice, keep your wits and follow the rules. What rules? He handed me an envelope. Your sign-on check is in there, as well as a few rules. Read them when you get home. Come prepared tomorrow night. I'll be having you on the phones. I took it and put it in my pocket. The rest of the night was quiet. Around 6 a.m., we got a call from a young woman who hung herself. She wanted her parents to know she left a note under her pillow, and her friends to know her locker combination. 7 a.m. finally came. Nate said, You did good for your first night. Some nights will be busier. Some you'll get no calls at all. How long have you been doing this, Nate? He grabbed his coat. 12 years. I'm on my third contract. Do you like it? He shrugged. It's a job. We walked out and waved. When I got home, I collapsed on my bed. Pulling the envelope from my pocket, I opened it, set the check aside, and unfolded the sheet. On it were 6 rules. If the caller begins describing the room you're sitting in, terminate the call immediately and leave your workstation for 15 minutes. The dead should not be able to see the living. If you hear breathing before the caller speaks, disconnect immediately. The dead do not need to breathe. If a caller says, I found the door, end the call and notify a supervisor. Under no circumstances should you answer a call that arrives exactly 1 minute after another call ends. Should the caller ask to speak with Nate, tell them Nate retired years ago. Do not mention that Nate is in the office. If somebody begs you to send help, transfer them to extension 7 and do not follow up. I set the page down and muttered, What in the world did I get myself into? I slept till around 3 in the afternoon. I hoped what I experienced the night before was just a dream. But the check on my nightstand told me it was all too real. I got up and made myself some breakfast. After a shower, I cashed the check and headed to the bookstore. When I pulled into the parking lot that evening, I had gotten there before Nate. As we walked in, he handed me a copy of his key. That way you won't have to wait for me. He smiled. You ready for this? I think so. You'll do great. I'll be right there if you have questions. That made me feel quite a bit better. He handed me a sheet of paper. I wrote you a script for the night. Hopefully it'll help. The night was forgettable. We only had one call the whole night. A drunk driver who hit a telephone pole. I tried to get him to share information, but he was confused and rambled, right at the end. He started sharing banking information, but the phone cut out halfway through. His 60 seconds were up. "Good try," Nate said. "It takes practice to get them finished in under a minute." My third night was busy. We had 7 calls. I started to feel like I was getting my feet under me. After I finished a call from a stabbing victim, Nate patted me on the back. "Man, that was a tough one, but you did really well." He moved to the doorway. I got to take a piss. "Be right back." A few moments later the phone rang. Nate was still gone. I gulped and picked up the phone. "Hello, I'm Chris. What's your name?" There was heavy breathing on the other end. "Hello," I stupidly replied. Malicious laughter filled my ear, and I realized my mistake when a voice said, "Thank you for staying on the line, Will." The line went dead. Nate walked in a minute later. My face must have been full of fear because he asked, "What's wrong?" It was breathing, and I didn't hang up. He clenched his jaw. "Well, that's not good." "Did it say your name?" I whispered. "Yes." He went pale before slamming the door shut and locking it. He flipped the lights off and whispered, "Don't make a sound." I held my breath and sat as still as possible. Down the hall, a door squeaked open. Heavy, wet footsteps tromped down the hall. "Will, where are you?" A dark, almost melodic voice echoed through the hall. Nate held a finger to his lips. The steps moved closer. "Will, are you here?" It stopped in front of our door and began to wiggle the doorknob. It smelled like mothballs and bleach. "Will," it giggled to itself. "Are you in there?" A loud bang rocked the door. Another followed, and another. Nate moved in front of the door. I could see his hands shaking. In a stuttering voice, he said, "Will retired years ago." The noise stopped. Then the shuffling retreated back down the hall. A door slammed shut. Nate was nearly hyperventilating as he reached out to turn on the lights. He muttered to himself, "I'll need to update the rules." He turned to me. "I've never seen a man look so scared. It's very important that you always follow the rules. They keep bad things away." I nodded, overcome by fear. Nate let me go home early that night. My car was empty but smelled of mothballs and bleach. By the time I got home, I made up my mind that I wasn't going back. But lying on my bed was the contract I signed. The 5-year duration was circled in red ink. That night I slept terribly. The next night, when I reported for work, Nate looked just as tired as me. He nodded when he saw me. He gave a weary smile, taking a drag on his cigarette. "Why'd you sign the contract 2 more times?" I couldn't help but ask. He puffed hard. "Well, after you hit 10 years, every year after, they promise that a loved one of your choice won't die. They can do that." He shrugged. "It's worked so far." He flicked his cigarette to the ground. "Let's get to work." As we stepped into the entryway, we were both surprised to see a note taped to the far wall. It said, "Night shift. We've had some issues on the day shift, so we felt it was right to record what we have learned. Here's what we know. If a caller asks whether the train tracks are still behind the building, answer yes and close the blinds immediately. If the caller thanks you before you have helped them, end your shift immediately and go home by a different route than usual. If a caller asks what time it is, answer incorrectly. The dead lose track of time after passing. Anything that asks for the correct time is trying to synchronize itself with our world. Hope all is well. Good luck." What's it mean? It means our job just got a little harder. Between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., we helped 2 different people who overdosed and 1 shooting victim. Nate was walking back into the room with coffee when I started a new conversation. "Hello, my name is Chris. What's your name?" Static followed, then a small voice. "I'm Carol. Can you tell me the time?" Instinctively, I looked down at my watch. As I did, Nate gently tapped my head and pointed to the new rules. "Hi, Carol. It's 5 minutes after 6. A loud sigh came through the phone, and Carol hung up. Nate raised his eyebrows. Didn't know they could hang up from their end." The sun rose, and as I drove home, a thought entered my mind. I should write this all down. None of my friends or family would believe these stories, but maybe someone out there would. So when I got home, I opened my laptop and started writing. And that brings us to now. I've been a last contact trainee for 4 nights now. I'll try to keep you posted throughout my 5 years, but for now I'm signing off.